Now call to order the committee of the whole on December 4th, 2023. The time is 7 p.m. Ben, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Member Orr.
Here.
You all changed on me.
Here.
Member Matheny.
Here.
Member Ware.
Here.
Member Owens.
Here.
Member McLeese.
Here.
Member Shroy.
Here.
Member Ware.
Here.
7 present.
Okay. Let's start off with ordinance and claims here. Actually, I have to recuse myself for the first one, so.
Oh, that's me. Well,
Yeah.
you want to read the ordinance or you want me to read it?
We don't need to read it. It's just a committee. You can just start.
Any
talking.
thoughts or consideration or?
On that, it's just a change in the options of that. It's what is it? If it's a change in residence of the ordinance, if it's a change of a resident in the a tenant in there, they have an option of not have it re-inspected. Where it is right now, I think we inspect it every time there's a change. Is that correct, Pat?
That is correct. Yeah, this would make it optional. In studying some of the industry statistics on turnover in large units, it's not unusual to see a 10-20% turnover in a calendar year.
Yeah.
And we estimate that there are probably last count around 1,500 units that are subject to this latest amendment that we've put forward. So that's another, could be another 150, 200 additional inspections, trying to squeeze in with the other inspections. And we just don't think that it, at this time provides any of that value. We don't see this kind of turnover in the 8 and under. We're seeing pretty consistent, that's, I guess we'll call it stickiness to the single family duplex triplex marketplace. You're in there, you stay there, whereas the bigger units, there is this turnover factor. So we make it optional. If you want us to come in, we're happy to come in and give you that inspection. We think that there could be value for you. You may, but your tenant.
Right.
And there'd be no charge for that if they wanted to. Otherwise, we would just see them when their license renews, and at that time, they would be giving us the updated tenant information.
Now, what would happen if they had not passed? They're like in the tenant moves out and they still have not passed the inspection. They would have to they wouldn't have the option. We'd still have to inspect that.
Okay, so that's a really specific set of circumstances, but let's say somebody applies for their license.
Right.
They're going to get the inspection. Schedule inspection by ordinance, it's supposed to be within 30 days of applying for the license. But due to extenuating circumstances, maybe that gets extended another 30 days, and during that 60 days, the tenant moves out. We would still be operating under the initial premise that place is just being registered and licensed, so the inspection has to complete whether the tenant is in there or not.
Good. So, is there any discussion? Anyone else?
No, I think this change makes sense.
It makes sense. I'll make a move that we put this on the agenda for next week.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll move item 3A to the council agenda. 3B?
And real quick, we
Oh, sorry.
Does Matt, yeah. Well, does he have to be out on 3B or not?
No.
Let's just keep him back.
Yeah. You handled that real well.
Thank you. You know me, I'm ready to move on.
Well, motion 2, or 3B, I should say, is an ordinance amending chapter 1302 permits in sections 1302, 04, conditions for the, insurance of permits. It's giving them, like, there's three options, I think, here. The first one is, a code case, if they have any, open code cases and stuff. The, second one, is the, if they had, I don't know what better word to use, is a stiff the contractor in the past. And, they couldn't do this. And then, the homeowners, what was that, Ben? We were down, we had a homeowners.
Right now, there's a homeowner exemption that basically you don't have to have a state license to perform work on your own home.
Okay.
The current proposal as written
That's
would
right.
require hiring a contractor if you're adding square footage.
Okay. So those are the three options on that. So is there any discussion on that or anything else?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Ben, about the homeowner, you'd have to have a registered contractor. What if the homeowner, it's perfectly within their skill set to do something like that? So that means that they are not able to work on their own home unless they go through the process of becoming a registered contractor is
With the city,
for
yeah.
the city.
Well, to answer your question, I think, we're open to, amendment here.
Okay.
There's been some conversation with at least one member of council on this matter, but what we're trying to get to is that, it's important to all the rest of us, that if you are going to start a project on your own,
Mm-hmm.
that you're able to see it through to completion.
Well, that's a
That
good
you
point.
looked through every variable that might come up that you
Mhm.
weren't suspecting, and that's what a professional licensed registered contractor can do. We had a situation down in the third ward with a home that has been under construction for 5 years. And situation with didn't properly understand the scope of the work that they were undertaking, encountered significant obstacles that created a financial hurdle that resulted in, contractors not being paid, which resulted in mechanics liens, which resulted in more work not being able to be done because
Yeah.
why would you take that job? And and that's not the only one. That's the best example of it. But there are others throughout the city where we've had this type of thing. So what we were looking to do is to try to say, listen, it's really in your best interest to use a licensed registered contractor, but we're willing to say that if you choose to do the work yourself and you apply for permits and follow the code process, building code, fire code, zoning code, the administration doesn't particularly have a preference on whether that work is done by you or done by ABC company, as long as those codes are followed, because, it sounds simple. I want to build a shed on my property. The setback requirements from your neighbor?
Mhm.
What are you doing with the discharge of the water from the roof? Because we have ordinances that govern that. Digging a foundation, what happens with the excess dirt? Are you spreading it on your property? Because we have an ordinance that governs some of this stuff now, to try to prevent excess runoff onto your neighbor's property.
Mhm.
So, we're okay with that part. We would like, though, I guess maybe splitting the hair a little bit further, that if it was intended to be habitable space, that we still use the licensed registered contractor. You're putting on a 2-story addition to your house, in case with the Penny Lane,
Mm-hmm.
that probably it had been done by there was a reason why the estimates on that project were what they were, and the homeowner thought that he could do it for less, and turned out it cost him far more than what the estimate. But you want to put that deck on, you want to build that detached garage or that detached shed yourself. Hey, pull the permits, follow the codes, we're all for it.
Okay. And that's where I was kind of going at,
Yeah.
like deck was a perfect example. I mean, my dad and I built a deck at their house years ago, pulled permits, followed code and everything, and, certainly within the scope of our abilities. Now, I don't think we would have put on a 2-story addition by ourselves, so, I mean, YouTube wasn't a thing back then, but, who knows, maybe it was.
No, I'm glad you brought that up though,
Yeah.
because when you think about it, you have a lot of car enthusiasts, right?
Mhm.
So they fix cars, they use them, they work, whatever. You have a lot of people that are really good these days and have like almost like their second hustle of rehabbing homes or electricians and plumbers. And because of YouTube, you can get really good at it. But just like what we did, we pulled permits. It was checked.
Mhm.
Plugs were maybe like said, hey, put one here, put one here. You didn't realize that. And I think that's the important part.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought it up, because I'm also not in favor of requiring the contractor for the work. I like the clarifying language and I totally understand where you're coming from. That would be my question is if we were to say, okay, we're not gonna require a contractor, is there other clarifying language that we might need to add so that, I do the work, it has to pass inspection. To shore up that part, is there any other clarifying language that we might need to add so that me being in compliance with the inspection process is gonna help us accomplish what we need to do?
Yeah, because it doesn't really say that.
That would be in a different chapter of the code. That is pretty set, so
Gotcha.
the problem we're attempting to get at here is not that they refuse to get inspections, that they just aren't doing the work. They overestimated their own personal abilities to do the work.
Yeah.
well, I'll make a motion to move 3B.
Strange right there.
next week.
It's-
Like it doesn't move to that area.
Do we have a second?
Then is the language situated currently
Well,
based on what the council members are
Yeah, I
asking? Or do
believe
we need
that
an amendment?
members, please your knowledge, might want to make an amendment to strike number 8
And then it
first.
says, oh, but you can also do your own work.
Okay.
Like, where does it lead to the memory issues here?
That's the part that would have to be amended, right?
Yeah, you said, yeah, that.
I mean,
Do you know what I'm saying?
So would your recommendation would be to strike 8 in its entirety or reword it?
Believe that what you're attempting to accomplish is to strike 8.
Okay, that helps me.
makes sense.
Okay,
Okay, and I'll make a motion.
yeah,
This was
3B.
3B, item 3B with the removal of, what is that? That is
Section 1.
section 1302.04 A8. We strike that.
Was that a motion?
Yeah, there's a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. It will be on the agenda. Okay, moving on to streets and alleys. Melissa. Well, this motion.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You're okay. Yeah, so the first item, is an ordinance to enter into a project agreement with ODOT for 2025 for resurfacing, on Main Street. Any discussion or questions?
It's much needed.
Mhm.
The curves and some of the gutters, it's much needed. It looked like an extension of Canton, and the city really starts at 50th Street. But by the way we have things now, it looks like it begins at Everhart. So this is much needed.
I think it was important to note here, it's a $1.4 million project
Mhm.
that Rob Graham again has gotten us in line with a grant for that to the tune of 1.1 million. So we're only picking up 20% of this whole project.
Yeah, fantastic.
That's good. So I'll make a motion. We move that to council agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And Melissa again.
This is a similar agreement, with ODOT, same deal, 80%. They pick up 80%, we would be responsible for 20%, and that would be in 2027, for Apple Grove Street between Pittsburgh and North Main.
Another great opportunity to pick up some grant money.
And this is just the agreement to accept that, so there's nothing spectacular about that.
Move that we move 4B to the council agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to community and economic development. That is me, and let's go with 5A. So bear with me as I try to read, because my eyes are all messed up. Okay, so this is the future. What we were looking at is the changing for classification from park and institutional to residential. This was the park and everything. I'm going to make a motion to table and we can discuss this. If we're not going to move forward with the project, I don't see a need to approve this right now. Especially if there is some land that is developable or saleable. But I will open to discussion on that.
No, I think that makes sense. If this is gonna be something that we might possibly not move forward on, the land is, at least a portion of it is, actually, no, I think all of it is, would technically be, general business. So, I mean, there would be a great opportunity for development of that property. It certainly has increased in value given the development around it, so if it's not gonna be a park, I don't see why we make it P&I, just to have it sit there.
And if circumstances change, we can just bring this right back
Absolutely.
to the table
And I hope
get it
that's-
approved again, and everybody knows.
Yeah.
Is there an
Yeah, I
impact?
genuinely, as the Ward One councilman, I genuinely hope
Yeah.
that we do bring it back and that it does become a park, but I think it'd be prudent to hold off.
What about the impact of the residents in the R70 area?
Can we move forward with that? It's- Right now, that just needs corrected, is my understanding, right? The R70 really just.
Would that affect the value of the surrounding lands? That's what I don't know. So, I mean, hypothetically, let's say that we move forward with that, but it makes the surrounding lands get less usable for access, or I don't know. I mean, that's a good question.
Yeah,
So, right now on the map, the sort of triangular sliver is half of people's backyards. And then the
Right.
two rectangles on the bottom of the orange, the top rectangular square is a lot that connects to the circle at the end of R&B. And it's a single family home right now. And then the bottom square is a lot that connects to Stratavon, and it's a single family home right now.
So you're just talking about that tiny solid triangle on the left.
Yeah, I believe what Member Wyrick is talking about is essentially cut all the city-owned property from this amendment, but still change all the homes to R50.
that's actually a good idea.
I think it's R70.
R7.
R70,
Yes, thank you.
Patrick, do you believe that would affect usage of any of the other properties in any way, shape, or form?
I don't think so. I guess I would be more concerned that this individual at the end of the street might want to sell their house, and if it's not properly zoned for them, it makes it difficult to sell. So if it's an R70 lot, which is how it's being used, we should probably zone it R70
Okay,
and let that piece go forward.
okay. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
No, it's a good idea.
So can we make a motion to amend to only include the R70 portions of this included map? Is there specific wording we could say for that, Ben?
That's fun. Let me pull it up.
And while he pulls that up, I just, I guess I'm concerned that we spent like $400,000 on this Catholic park. And I get it if we don't have the money to develop it. I just feel like, let's figure out what we're doing with it. We're gonna need to sit on it.
Agreed.
We're sitting on a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot that were really great decisions, but this one, it's not gonna be a park. Let's get rid of it.
I think I would like to say that I hope that it will be a park
Yeah.
someday, but,
There would be a motion and a second to amend ordinance 69-2023 to strike section 1A.
Stroya moves.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay,
I need a motion to move these.
okay. Make a motion to move into the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And moving on to 5B. Okay, so. Okay, so 5B is it's 48 parcels. It's kind of a cleanup of Main Street. This was approved previously. We just need to set the public hearing date, but I will open it to discussion. And we do have a public hearing date in mind of January 22nd at 6:45 p.m. So, any questions, comments on the legislation or the date?
It's 48 parcels on Main Street?
Yes.
The bulk of the parcels are the Shearbrook condos,
Oh, okay.
so each condo is its own parcel.
So this went to planning and then came back. So,
Planning's good. I'm good.
yeah.
Motion. Motion to adopt?
Second?
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And a motion and a second, I'll make the motion to set the public hearing for January 22nd at 6:45 p.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 5C. Okay, so 5C, this is, let me check my notes here. Yeah, this is the wall annexation. So this was kind of strange, and we're going to have kind of the same scenario come into play with the next legislation as well. So there's a range of dates where we had to wait. We brought this up previously, but you have to wait 60 days from when it comes back to the county commissioner to get it approved, and then you have to have a window of getting it approved before 120 days. So the window begins on the 15th. So if we start our readings now, we will be in that window of approval. So this is just putting that legislation to finish that annexation.
Okay. Looking for a motion?
I am.
All right, so I would move that we put item 5C on the council agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and then moving on to 5D. So this is starting the annexation process for the Jackson North Canton agreement that we had. So this is just starting that process. Very, very clear, very simple. So any questions, comments on that?
Nope.
Okay, I will move that we adopt that, move it on the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And, okay, so now,
Can,
are
quick
they bringing them
question.
in here?
Are we putting that on an emergency when it comes to agenda?
I don't believe so.
Oh, because,
Oh, maybe we are, yeah, okay. Yes. we
okay.
are.
And why would we put it on emergency?
I think it waives the waiting period of 30 days on that. So to get started on the annexation process, to send it to the commissioners. Otherwise, if we go through 3 readings, we're gonna go into our break, and then we're gonna go to probably about January 22nd, and then 30 days after that. So, well into February. That's
Okay,
too slow for my taste.
You guys are gonna.
thank you.
Do you need an extra?
Well,
You can use this here. It's up here.
Are you ready for us now?
We are, yes.
And then do we have the team? I'm looking at that, are we the teams?
Yes. You look, you can't even see it. Hi.
You might
Just sneak this back. So as soon as you start, I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead, yeah, feel free to.
Well, good evening, everyone. As we move on to, on the agenda for 5E, we've asked for representatives from the Maple Street Commerce LLC to help us with a presentation, a request for economic development incentives at 101 East Maple Street, known locally here as the Hoover West Factory, the City Council. And we have in the audience with us today also Jeff Wendorf, Superintendent of Schools, Tim Walker, our your new title is treasurer, I believe, of the Canton City School District. Jeff Martin from Industrial Realty Group, and Jeff, I forget your gentleman's assistant's name.
Mike Wellman.
Mike Wellman, thank you very much. So let's go ahead and we'll open the program for a presentation as to what are we looking at and going forward with the development of the Hoover West Factory. Would that be okay as an introduction? Okay, thank you very much.
We also have Greg Soltis, another architect, our staff helping with this project from RDL. So Greg.
Welcome, Greg.
Greg is in Chicago.
Hi, everyone.
Is RDL from Chicago?
No.
Okay.
No.
And Mike Wellman, your history of this project first.
Yeah. I'm with Melton Architects. It's my firm. I was at another architecture firm in 2012 when I started working on the Hoover project. There's been some fits and starts along the way, and they've been nice enough to keep me on for this phase. So it's just my quick introduction right now.
And Mike is being humbled. His wife, Diana Wellman, has been instrumental in us resetting the historic tax credits for the project as well. So that's been, that's immensely helpful to kind of relaunch this project. So as the mayor mentioned, I'm Jeff Martin with Industrial Commercial Properties. The Hoover District is actually owned in a joint venture. So Maple Street Commerce is the name of the joint venture. It is between Industrial Realty Group, IRG, which is Stu Lichter's company. Stu owns 45% of the project. And my company, Industrial Commercial Properties, which is owned and operated by Chris American. We own 45% of the project as well, and then D-Hop also has a 10% interest in the project. Still be working with Dan to figure out if he wants to stay in the project long term or not. It's not been resolved. I think that will be a conversation forthcoming between the different ownership groups in the near term here. So I've been with ICP, Industrial Commercial Properties, for 3 years, and this was one of the projects that I immediately latched onto when I joined the company and said, this is a huge missed opportunity, something that we have to figure out a way forward, get done. My background is actually on the retail side of the real estate sector. I worked on a lot of kind of mixed use projects when I was with a company called Seritage, which developed Sears and Kmart's for a number of years in kind of major metros across the country. And this kind of fit that mold of a big, massive structure that had a lot of potential. So immediately kind of set to work trying to recast the historic tax credits, which had expired when I came into the picture, and we were successful in doing that June of last year. So a little bit of time has lapsed since that award, and we're starting to push up against another deadline. We're going to ask the state for an extension of those historic tax credits to make sure those don't lapse on us, but feel confident that we're going to be able to do that. And a lot of projects have been stymied of late given the capital market situation, interest rates soaring, and banks not lending near where they were even a year ago. So we're out in the market talking to lenders, and we've already identified a handful of lenders that are interested. We're trying to put financial terms in place today. And a big portion of that is the city's participation in this tip. I would say, but for this participation on the city and school boards behalf, this project really wouldn't be getting off the ground. So when we met, Chris, Stu, and I, middle of October, we came down and met with the mayor and Pat, and had a kind of good heart-to-heart conversation about the history of the project and what is it actually going to take to actually get this thing off the ground and bring it back to life. It's such an important, centrally located site for the city and has immense potential. So I'm excited to say, walking away from that meeting, we felt like we had a roadmap. This was 5-6 weeks ago, and we've been working really well with the school district in that time period as well. And excited to kind of bring the plans out to more of a public presentation tonight, which I'll let the architects speak more eloquently about than I can. But just thanking the city and the school district for their cooperation to this point.
Thank you for the background, a little bit on that. Shall we go and just to have the architects, or do you want to relay the little bit of the foundation we have, a relationship you've established with the school? Which way would you like to go?
Why don't we dive into the plan and then
Okay.
there's questions on the structure.
Let's look at the rendering and give us a little outline of the plan.
Sure.
Thank you.
Greg, can I turn it over to you to kind of do the initial walkthrough of the plans?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us tonight. We're very excited about this plan, and the rendering that you see up on the screen is something that Michael and Jeff and I worked on developing with a bunch of our other team members. And when we were talking about this project, we were talking about how we could take this really historic factory that's been an essential part of the urban fabric in North Canton for a long time, and really reimagine it as something that becomes more, again, the beating heart of downtown North Canton. And so in doing that, we wanted to do something more than just restore a historic building, but let that be the focal point of kind of like a living room for the community, and let it spill out into the community. And so you can see here that what we've done is we've reimagined basically like a town square that has both softscape green components along with hardscape components, lots of passive programming, and opportunities for active programming. The difference between those being like passive programming, the elements you put into a site that encourage people to be in that place all day and night, and active programming being opportunities to have events there like farmers markets or concerts, things of that nature. We've also really redesigned this space to be to add connective tissue to downtown Canton. Downtown Canton has so many great assets and amenities already. And so we wanted this to be kind of like this focal point that with improved sidewalks and crosswalks and on-street parking and connectivity to make it much more pedestrian friendly and really allow it to kind of be the place that people want to hang out. So you can see here we have multiple different pathways that go through the space. And you can see those coming through the green space. We have the suggestion of a stage. We have many different planting beds that will add color to the area. We've got a big green lawn with these steps that kind of go up to a dining terrace that will serve whatever restaurants and retail establishments that will end up on the first floor there. And then to the left of all that, you can see there's an esplanade that we have a creative idea to maybe try to create these lighting components that are actually vacuum cleaners representative of the Hoover vacuum cleaners history. So starting with maybe their first vacuum cleaner. And those would lead into what we're calling like the grand courtyard in the center. You can see the light emanating from that. So those would be like a fun element that celebrates the history of Hoover in North Canton and draws people into this courtyard. And there would be, elements, restaurant and retail elements that spill into that courtyard. You could see the suggestion of maybe a little bit of rooftop dining overlooking the green space, an area for like valet pickup and drop off to the left of where the vacuum cleaners are. And again, like I mentioned before, connectivity to adjacent properties. If you go to the next slide. So this is what it looks like today, obviously. And these are some historic photos that show what the property used to look like. And there's always been that big green space in the front. And the workers would normally enter the factory from the south side. There's an old entry gate there. If you go to the next slide. We did some analysis, like looking at existing green space and some hardscape space and what were the areas for parking and existing amenities around. So you could see the churches, the public library, city hall, the community center, and then of course the little historic block that still exists to the southwest of the property that has a bunch of cute little old buildings and some retail and restaurant spaces there. Next slide. So then what we did is we started to analyze, well, how would people, access this? It's not a factory anymore, so it's going to function more like a mixed use sort of place and really an extension almost of the street grid. And so we looked at what the main access entry points would be, the main pedestrian paths where people would likely want to walk, and thinking about how we can get people into this property because it's a huge property. And again, it's not going to be functioning like a factory anymore. So you can see the north-south axes that we started to create. Next slide. And then again, this is a section through that esplanade going into what would be the courtyard. And you can see up above where it's cut. And so we really kind of thought of that as like, how do you draw people into that space and how do you divide that space up and program it so that it would be a place that people wanted to go into? Please, there's lots of different ways to explore this. So you can see you start with a plaza potentially across the street where City Hall is, and there's the space between City Hall and the bank. There's North Main Street, and then a hardscape plaza and a recreational green with, the retail strip sort of up against the front of the building that would be activated by dining and other types of activity associated with the retail or restaurants. And then you go through this sort of gateway. And again, you could potentially be following these, historic vacuum cleaners, leading you through time, the development of the vacuum cleaner into that space where there would be potentially kiosks, other like retail that spills out into their access to residential amenities, potentially, if other types of things like hotels become part of the project, those sort of things that you would have access to. And then it becomes more private as you go into the courtyard, really geared more towards the residents of the project. Next slide. And these were some things we looked at when we were looking at the building frontage. You could see there on the right-hand side, retail frontage zone, foot traffic zone, amenity zone. Again, we started to really think about the space and the way people would use it, and taking something that is really a big industrial building that's part of our heritage as Northeast Ohioans, and humanizing it, and starting to think about how those zones that we create, how we would fill those zones, how we would program them and use them to connect to the street, connect to the Bitzer Park across the street. Next slide. And these were some ideas for, some imagery that we used to inspire us for landscaping. Obviously, the vacuum cleaner there, plus if the vacuum cleaner and the pedestrian light fixture had a baby, what would that look like? That would be kind of fun. Next slide.
Yeah.
And then thinking about the retail strip and how we would, introduce, again, that passive programmatic elements like different types of seating, fun, colorful, potential art or paving, landscaping, potentially water features, things like that, that really allow shading structures, different trees, to create microclimates there, and really make it a place that people feel comfortable in and want to hang out in. Again, make it like the living room for North Canton, where you go hang out and you get to know your neighbors, in the sense it helps to foster a better sense of community. Next slide. And also it would be a destination for others in Northeastern Ohio. I mean, I live up in Cleveland and I'm so excited about this project, and I would drive down here and, if this turns into this sort of project. And then this was showing some of the ideas we could use for some of the shared retail and gathering spaces in the courtyard. Again, art, lighting, different types of seating, all kinds of different passive programmatic elements, and maybe even pergolas and shade structures for residents to, be able to read or do work. If people work from home and it's a nice day, you could work out in the courtyard, or additional sort of seating for coffee shops, restaurant elements. Next slide.
Yeah, Greg, another comment just to add onto what you're saying here is, there's also opportunities to do community events in this space too. So, I know the farmers market has had multiple homes, and we envision this as a perfect, center of downtown, core opportunity for that. Potentially an opportunity to keep some of the space, raw shell space that can be used in shoulder swing seasons, and then use the outside kind of lawn area, other parts of the year.
Yeah, really, and thanks for saying that, Jeff, good, and reminding me, because it really kind of takes that culture of the public square, that exists in Northeastern Ohio in general, and really allows there to be a focal point, a place for a community to happen. And these were just some more images about what the private courtyard might look like, a little bit calmer, more private, a place, again, where you might go meet friends if they come to visit you, or go to work. If you're working from home and it's a nice day, you can work out in the courtyard. Next slide. And this is it's a site plan and also the first floor building floor plan that really allows you to see how the interior spaces and the exterior spaces connect and work together to really foster like a really lively, interactive sort of place that people, it's not like a one and done. You come here, there's order to the place, but there's just enough of like what's around the corner that you'd really want to explore. And you can see here what we've done is, besides, you can see the public space that's on where it says City Center Green, Picnic Knoll, all the passive programming and opportunities for active programming that we put in that space. And the Esplanade that really connects across the street to City Hall, and the plaza that's between the bank and City Hall. But also this north-south axis where you can see the yellow that connects the parking on the top and the bottom. And, we want this to be a very walkable place, but we live in Northeastern Ohio, and most people do get around most of the time by automobiles, and you want to make it easily accessible for people from the automobile. So it's easy to park, see where the entrance is, and this north-south access moves through, the retail and restaurant spaces, the spaces that would connect for residents, to the apartments that would be above, but the public amenity spaces on the ground floor, a potential co-working space, the grand courtyard, and whatever ends up in the top. So there's easy way to access space from the automobile and move through it north-south or move through it east-west from Main Street. So we really think that, you know, we've taken a big industrial building and designed it in a way that will make it not only easy for people to access and easy for them to understand, but fun to explore. Is there anything else you wanted to point out on this, specifically on this floor plan right now, Jeff? We have the more violet purpley color is retail. The yellow are amenity spaces.
Yeah, the red space that's kind of in the center area on the ground floor. You know, we're envisioning that to be kind of a co-working office type space. So that, you know, I think is roughly 10,000 square feet here, Greg.
Yeah, close to. It's like we added some potential like restrooms there for the site, so it took the space down a little bit less from that. I think it's closer to like 8,500. But also you'll notice on here we have these various different courtyards. So there's the north courtyard, the south courtyard, you know, besides the grand courtyard, and then also the east courtyard. So there's lots of opportunities for programming wherever, you know, restaurant or retail might be located into the site.
Are there apartments as well, are also is that the retail?
Yes.
Yeah.
So upstairs ground floor. That was the ground floor.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So second and third. Fourth.
Okay, that's what I thought, yeah. Are you able to do anything with what was already there, or does that have to start over?
Yeah, I can talk about some of that a little bit.
Okay.
So there's a lot of framing in there.
Yeah.
Pretty much that'll yeah.
Oh, great.
Get reused.
But it was fairly far along.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, it's probably not a whole lot of ways to lay out a big, long factory building, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're kind of stuck with a corridor down the middle and apartments where the windows are, so. It's not gonna change that much.
Okay.
How many
More
apartments?
one bedrooms or two bedrooms or a multitude or just?
Yeah, so we have, I'll get into my spiel.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Just thank you again for having me here. I've been working on, as I said, Hoover's West Factory since 2012. You know, I've had numerous challenges since then, but I'm really excited to be on it again. And I think the plans that we're presenting today are the most engaging and complete version that we've developed so far. So as it stands, there's 226 apartments, a mix of 1s, 2s, and 3 bedrooms. Mostly, it weighs heavily towards the 1 bedroom, but there are also a fair number of 2 bedrooms as well, and then just a handful of 3 bedrooms. They kind of range from 600 to 1,500 square feet. They'll all have pretty generous living areas. And then we also have 63 units that have a balcony that overlooks that grand courtyard in the middle. So I think they'll be pretty special units.
Yeah.
As you've seen, we also have first-class collection of amenities. We have lots of indoor parking, there'll be fitness and a community room, and it's a series of outdoor courtyards that Greg talked about that I think are really going to make this project stand out from anything else. We also have some room to grow. We hope to attract some additional businesses, commercial clients, and possibly a hotel, as Jeff mentioned. The buildings at the northeast and northwest corner of that plan up on the screen right now, you know, those are kind of their own isolated elements. So I think Jeff is hoping to, you know, possibly find either a hotel or a tenant that can take those buildings, you know, over completely each.
Yeah, just having the addition of 200 plus people living in the building will certainly help support businesses and services that we anticipate on the ground floor. We're thrilled with Diebold's, you know, expansion at the Hoover district as well. I mean, I'm told they have over 500 employees now, and they're consolidating. The hope is that we can consolidate more of their operation here long term. So that's a great, you know, for the community, and just having living and working here is definitely going to support the businesses. And as Mike mentioned, we do have a couple additional building opportunities with building 6, which is the northwest corner, and building on the far right northeast corner. Then also kind of the existing office building that faces Maple Street, leaves a lot to be desired from a tenancy standpoint. So I think there's huge potential to, once the residential stabilizes, to really see the rest of the project take off.
We threw in a couple of older renderings of apartments. These will probably change substantially, but this is kind of just a typical rendering of a couple different unit types. I believe we have 63 different unit types in this, just because of the nature of the building. We just end up with a wide variety of layouts, which I think is usually pretty attractive.
As Mike mentioned, those balconies that face the kind of center courtyard there, there's like an inset piece, so actually
It's mostly covered. It doesn't protrude out anymore. These are older, so yeah, the balconies are covered and overlook the courtyard.
So I mean, that'll be a pretty nice event. I would like to have that arrangement, covered balcony set.
It's also important to note, I think, as Jeff has mentioned several times, that this building is already listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And the State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service oversee that whole process and have been partners, throughout the design. A few more, Greg, I don't know if you want to touch on any of these renderings at the end of the presentation here.
These are views from a model we built, and we put them in here because we really just wanted you to kind of be able to be down in the space and understand better what that space could look like. So this is kind of a low aerial. You can see that to the right is like the dining terrace, and then this pedestrian connection that kind of ramps up a little bit and ramps down a little bit, in front of the dining terrace, and then these steps that would be places where people could sit to watch, their children playing on the lawn, or if there was a concert and in the little bandstand there. And then you can see, the Esplanade in the distance there, kind of connecting City Hall across the street, into the complex. Next slide. And then this is looking back on the Esplanade. I had to grab some vacuum cleaners for SketchUp. So those are not representative of what the lighting fixtures might look like. But the space itself, I think this gives like a good feel for what the space, is going to look like. Next slide. And those are planting beds you can see that are not necessarily all filled in with, we would work with the landscape architect to really make those special. And then this is, if you're looking at the green and you're like on Main Street, the beginning of the Esplanade. Next slide. And that would be looking, directly across the street from City Hall, what it would look like. So I think it would, the mix of softscape and hardscape, and again, connecting to Bitzer Park across the street would really make this a really special place to be. And that would be like a little knoll that kind of just a gentle rise, and then a nice like seating wall around the edge. Next slide. I think that was the last one.
Yeah.
So those are just, and then this is again the rendering that we had worked on.
Well, thank you very much, Greg and Jeff. And we've used the word destination many times, and I know since 2008 we've been working on that. We've been always optimistically, I think, hopeful that something could happen over there. And I know during my tenure here that our vision here was always trying to make this area here a destination. We have a beautiful town square, and it's just taken us to this point, I think, to finally work things where we might have a catalyst to have this go forward. And if council has any questions or anything like that, what else do you need from us, do you think, for us to help get this going? I know we've offered a lot over the years, and but I know we're at a critical point where we want to try to get this project in motion.
Yeah, I mean, we've all put a lot of hard work and effort into this through the years, and clearly understand the frustrations of it not happening sooner. I have not lived and breathed that nearly as long as you all have. So I think just the support with the TIF. I mean, it is a big ask. We realize that, but we think it'll pay it forward. Through the income taxes that are generated, people living here, and other opportunities to generate revenues through the businesses that we're going to support. So, while we're requesting property tax increment between the base taxes that are paid today and the future taxes that would be paid after the project is recessed, and we're asking for that increment to be funneled back into the project to support it at this point. And I think that's going to move the needle to kind of get it across the finish line.
So what you're asking this council and this mayor for is a tip that covers the West Factory, that is a Section 41 tip that would allow the tax dollars to be invested in the private infrastructure. The ask that you've had, that you're looking for, is 100% over a 30-year period. And we've, in our discussions for the last couple of years, made it abundantly clear that all pathways go through our partner, that is the North Canton City School System. And I think we've had a couple starts and failures along those lines in the last couple of years, but this time
money for educating students. So that's really the fundamental agreement with where they're at. We've presented to the board that concept and this particular set of details, and the board feels that's a fair and a doable arrangement. If nothing happens to the West Factory, as it hasn't for the last several years, we get no more revenue for educating students. So if nothing happens, we get no more revenue. If something happens, we get an agreement on the terms, and that money that would come to the schools is gone back into the project. But we feel that there's a fair trade for that, those future tax dollars. So,
Yes. Yes.
I always gotta check with my finance guy. It's not a math major. So, yeah, we're pleased, the board's approved it, and pleased with the what's on the table currently.
And for purposes for council to understand what that is in essence a cash and property.
Yes, correct.
And so we believe that to be $2.5 million in cash, which the school has indicated they would be using for the
future development on the south side of 7th Street.
There you go.
Yeah.
And then a 10.3 acre tract of land that the school is seeking for future athletic use purposes. And so that's what has been agreed to by your partner, your employers, and the school system. And as part of this TIP, being a valid TIP, those things would actually have to happen, right? And by a certain timeline to make sure.
Yeah, we'll have a separate development agreement with the city that's tied to the TIF, and then we're gonna have another side letter agreement with the school district.
So what we will be considering as the weeks move ahead is TIF legislation to put TIF into place. And during that course of time, there will be TIF development agreements between the city and the developers that will iron out all of the mechanics of how this will work for now and the next 30 years. And we are in draft mode on those items. So, but we expect that before TIF is finally approved, that those draft agreements would be presented to both sides, agreed to, then presented to this council.
With the economic climate, how fast do you think can move? Are banks interested? Are you getting different feelings than when you had in 2012 versus now versus the middle?
Yeah, in a perfect world, we would have liked to have been pursuing financing 2 years ago, not
Yeah.
today. But it is what it is, and that's why our ask became such a big ask to the community. You know, that being said, a lot of these banks have commitments where they want to purchase historic tax credits, and ideally we would like, to have a lender that can both buy the credits and be, kind of the debt provider for the project. So that's what we're out there chasing right now. I mean, right now, nothing's happening for the holidays.
Yeah.
Banks have shut down, for a year. I don't think that you can go to the office.
Don't tell our banking friends that.
I don't mean to offend any bankers. So I think, probably if we can get a commitment letter from the bank this year, that's a big win for us.
Like the whole year, like 2024?
No, like the next
2023, got it.
So
Yeah.
we have a whole team of kind of finance folks that are out there. They have banking relationships that, kind of carry that water for us right now. Realistically, I think those conversations happen more sincerely January 15th,
Mhm.
once kind of banks have their quotas for the year and have like an open to buy and how much debt they're willing to place at the marketplace. So, I think if we can get to a closing by the end of the first quarter with a bank, then that's best case scenario for us right now.
That's great.
When you start construction, okay, would you be doing the retail, the residential, everything at once, or would you phase it out
I'll answer that for them. The zoning requires them to do it simultaneously.
simultaneously? Good.
Yeah, we actually, from what you see that's framed in the building today, there are 130 units, or 31 that were framed historically. So we've actually expanded the scope, so now we're up to 226 units. And, from an execution standpoint, it's a lot more efficient to mobilize once at the outset.
Now, your firm was part of the Hall of Fame Village, correct?
So the Hall of Fame Village, just Industrial Realty Group, IRG, which is student liquor.
Okay.
So it's not my firm, but it's our
Okay.
partner in other deals.
And I know they ran into some problems and stuff of that nature. Do you feel any of those problems will fall in, into our project?
I think they already have it. Frankly. So
Yeah.
hopefully that's
Always forward.
Backwards. But if Stu Lecter were here tonight, and Stu's taken a very special, keen interest in this project.
Well, it's about time because it's been long enough, well.
Stu has made kind of a commitment to the mayor and Pat that we're gonna figure this out finally and get it
Okay.
across the finish line.
Thank you.
We've sat in the rooms together and he has committed verbally again, Jeff and the team, they want to see this project through. And as Patrick mentioned before, nothing was going to happen unless our school system was going to be made whole. And they accepted that, and we've been able to help broker and bring everybody to the table and come to I think, a very worthwhile agreement for the schools. I appreciate the board approving that agreement. And again, I don't want, this has been an anchor for us, okay? And I didn't want it to sink anymore. And this is the closest, I think, that we've gotten to a catalyst going forward for having this to be a destination city. Yet with some small charm to it, but yet with new and enlivening things. When you think of the Winterfest, the May Fitness Festival, the 720 Market, Crafts Fair, yoga on the lawn there from the Y, a number of things, just families coming down and sitting outside for a summer afternoon. Maybe you're gonna come down from Cleveland and have an ice cream cone somewhere down here by us or something, or a sandwich, but at any rate, for us, we have to invest to invest. And if we're not investing, then people aren't going to come to our community to invest in us. And I think about that, and I think about prosperity and progress. I see prosperity here, but I also see progress to get us to the point where we're going to have something here over the next 30, 40 years, or it's going to be on my lifetime, put it that way, I should say, of an opportunity for people to enjoy this. And thinking of the residential upstairs, I still talk to people on the street, okay? If there was apartments there, they would downsize in a heartbeat. Market rate apartments, quality construction, all the other things you want. Library, I got a pool, I got a Y, I've got walking distance to the schools, walking distance, connection to the Walsh University. Can you imagine what connection they would like to have with this facility? And, of course, maintaining the North Canton heritage there, our Chamber of Commerce, bringing these things as a focus back in the city. So at any rate, I appreciate the presentation, and this is the most detailed that I have seen since our talks. And I just, I'll leave it up to council to continue any other conversation.
At what point would the exchange of property and money be given to the school?
So details yet to be worked out, school district. I want to make sure that there's not going to be another false start.
Yeah.
So ideal scenario would be as soon as a loan closes for the property, we can transfer.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was just gonna add that, I share a lot of the sentiments that the mayor has. I think these pictures are fantastic. It gets me fired up. I know that, the property has been, sadly, it's derelict, and it's an eyesore right on the square, and I think this would just be an absolute gem in the city. And so I also want to give praise to, I don't know what your level of involvement was, but certainly to the administration for bringing the schools in. Because I know in years past, before this administration, before, I think all of us on council were here, there was a CRA at one point in time that there was no conversation between the city and the schools. The heck with the right hand not even knowing what the left hand was doing, they weren't the same body, I guess. But, so I think this is a great step in the right direction. Mr. Shoya asked the question that I had. One of the questions that I had, which was in regards to when the transfer of money and the property. But I guess the other question I have is so when do you anticipate starting? Is this something we're going to see movement here in 2024?
Yeah.
Remember, he has to get the money.
We actually.
Oh, I know. Well, I
So
think
we
the
actually
ordinance
have-
says they're going to start work within 6 months. So
Well, they have to
We
get
do
the money.
have deadlines
Yeah.
with the historic tax credits.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that really kind of forces our hand to move it as quickly as possible. at this
Sure.
point, because we've let time lapse.
Mhm.
It has. So, I think from the point where construction drawings are done, a few months off from that, we'd be in a position to start as soon as the bank situation is, as soon as you get a loan on the and so that could be as early as the spring. We might do some stuff over the winter to kind of shore up certain parts of the building that are not watertight, that are continuing to have an impact on structural components. But yeah, I mean, we're contemplating a 2 to 2.5 year construction.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
I think,
Just the only other thing I'll just throw in real quick. I'm sorry, Scott.
no, go.
You'd mentioned some false starts, and I have always been very optimistic about this project because again, I see what's here on the screen, and I think that'd just be absolutely fantastic. Should this not go forward, should this be another false start, what are your long-term plans? I guess as a backup, if we don't, if your vision on the screen does not come to fruition, what is your long-term plan for the property?
Yeah, we've had one of those like heart-to-heart moments over the last year with the city too, and discussed, the merits of tearing it all down and kind of looking at it from scratch. I think the more vocal folks in the room, Stu and myself, we're big advocates for trying to execute the vision that was initially laid out. And we think it's the best vision and creates the best environment for the community. Building something new there would probably be nice too, but same character or charm that I think this project does.
Yeah.
So I think that's been our focus, is trying to figure that out. But the alternative is scraping and trying to sell.
Thank you.
I think there's so much momentum in our whole community in almost Northeast Ohio. And so we saw success with the plaza downtown, and I'm sure you've seen that as well. And they did so much with green space. They did so much with the Hall of Fame montage, and you see the football things and all the different things down there. And they had to work with the schools to do it, right? And so you kind of see that benefit, like that the schools had to do something as well, and they did do it. So you saw that in Canton, you now see the village. Things are going up every single day. I was just on a tour there last week. You see them using local community companies, and Stu is successful in many, many attributes. If he can put that kind of energy into this now, this will be hugely successful. And it goes along with his mission and vision of what you see and all the developments in Chicago and all the rehabbing that you've seen that people are drawn to, I think is what this could be. When you have something like the Hercules project downtown that is sold out and they are truly looking at a railroad across from
This has so much more to offer.
the Art of Pleasant sold out, and it's so neat. Like, it's beautiful inside. We've had events there. It's wonderful. But I mean, that's my point, is that that mission or that vision, I think, will stick here and can truly work. And I think there's such synergy, like, with our whole community. And to have more people come in North Canton, we just had a very, very successful Winterfest. We've had an Oktoberfest. People just don't stay in their communities anymore. They go to anything that says fest on the end, and they'll run, they'll bike, they'll whatever it takes. So if we can keep getting people here because of this is just another destination that connects Market Avenue, Cleveland Avenue, Whipple Avenue, all over the place. I mean, you look at, maybe you've seen Jackson Township and their whole new pavilion. It's just, we're pavilion hopping, and this would be amazing for that, and no one cares where they spend money. They just spend it.
Well, we also have the connectivity with the Hall of Fame.
Yes.
Just down the street, there's a lot of spin. That's why I think potentially hotel in the future could
Yeah.
play with the project, synergies with, the school district's athletic campus kind of master plan, master facilities plan, and that could all play in well together.
Right.
Appreciate those comments.
Cool.
A couple questions. Thank you for being here and thank you for talking with us. It's the first time I've talked with anyone who's involved in the project at all. So I really appreciate that. And thank you, administration and schools, for just working together to try to make this thing happen. I think it's probably really clear that this is both economic and emotional for us, right? We need this project to move forward. And so I feel, really hopeful. But two things that just I'm curious about, because we're going to get a lot of questions when we leave this room tonight. One is, Mike, you had mentioned that you've been involved since 2012 and there have been numerous challenges. And I guess I'm just curious, what changed? Why? I don't want you to change your mind, but why do we finally get to move forward now? What happened?
No, I can address it. I think that's a Jeff.
I don't care who addresses it, yeah.
And I don't have the full retail on the historical side
Yeah.
of things, but I mean, I think it's, the administration, both the city and the schools being a cooperative partner has really kind of bubbled this to the surface.
Right.
Toot my own horn a little bit too for kind of driving the process. We do have a lot going on between the two companies, and I kind of took it as a personal mission to figure out some path.
Thanck you. Appreciate that.
If
And
that
then,
was a personal mission, maybe we might name a street after you this session.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I will have to turn that over to my own.
One of the vacuum lights for sure.
And then I guess I'm just curious, because I'm not a property developer, so I'm just curious, you guys do this, you've done this before. How accurate a representation of what reality will be is what you're showing us? Is this this is today's, but there will be 500 iterations of that, and we'll end up with something.
I think we've already gone through the 500.
Okay, good.
I really hope that we're there. Like I said, I've been working on this for over a decade, and I think what Greg and his team have done with the plaza and everything is by far the best version that has been created. So, I think financially, once it all falls into place, I do think it will be pretty close to what you see up there. We still have to get a building permit, so those guys can muck things up sometimes. But I think I can't see any giant hurdles, wise or construction wise, that would drastically change what you see on the screen.
It is what you saw, and same with Centennial Plaza.
I too appreciate the fact that everybody's here today, back at the school, in the administration, but more importantly, that the school is on board with this project. It's a big it's a big ask from the city to develop that and for them to give up 30 years. I wonder if IRG, industrial, commercial properties and DHOF would consider transfer of the property before year end. Not necessarily the monetary portion. I understand that through needing to get the banks, but as a gesture of, yes, this project's going to happen and a commitment to us and a commitment to our moving forward with the TIF to transfer that property this year.
That is the full intent.
Okay.
We're in trouble if we don't make that.
Well, thank you for coming down. It's huge. And thanks for being a part of the project.
Oh, yeah.
I toured it so many, right when you first started, it was
Yeah,
really
right.
cool then.
Well, I'm not sure where I'm supposed to get, but
Okay.
I want to follow up on one of John's points is that, so we know that, Mr. Rick is, one of the largest developers of industrial property in the United States, and he's very successful at what he does. I guess the question would be, so as the success of the Hall of Fame project continues, continued growth requires continued capital investment. My concern is that, where is IRG in being able to fund, more than one development at a time? It seems that in the past, lots of more attractive return on investment opportunities have occurred across the country, and we've been left, holding the bag. And I want to make sure that, that when you get the financial commitment, from lenders, that you have all that you need to make this go forward and not be subject to a capital call down at Hall of Fame Village and the like. However, you could add to that. I know it's an awkward question.
It's probably a more direct question for Stu and Chris, but I think
Well, you could relay that to them.
the way that the way that they articulated it to me is, let's get the bank commitment in place. We're willing to put the additional equity in the developer equity on the project, and what the TIF and the historic tax credits do is it really lowers the developer's equity that has to be put in. So where banks may be lending at 55 to 65% loan cost right now, which is not a lot, that gap is being filled by the historic tax credits and the TIF. So the lender will recognize that value from the property taxes back in the development.
And what were you preliminarily estimating the probable cost on this project is?
Yeah, right now it's right around 55 million in additional costs to what's already been incurred. So, we haven't really updated numbers recently. We need to go back to the contract.
Can you remind me, what was the historic tax credit worth?
So we got the full award at state level.
Okay. 5 million. Is there
also
any,
get federal tax credits at 20% of your construction costs.
so that would be out of the 55 million?
Yes.
You get 20% back on that? And that goes into the project or into investors?
Into the project.
Into the
A
project.
lender would recognize that as
Oh,
I can't speak for the finance side of things,
that's a
but
lot.
if I can talk briefly, kind of architecturally, in my practice, I'm seeing a big focus on smaller cities and towns.
Is there extra 5?
Developers are shying away, it doesn't seem like it, but developers are shying away from New York City and Chicago and San Francisco, and they're looking for, I'm doing a ton of work in Dayton right now. I've put up 400 apartments in downtown Dayton. So I really think people like you are starting to look at small and mid-sized cities, and that there's going to be continued focus on that because people don't want to pay New York and San Francisco fees. They want a nice community like this, but still have a lot of those amenities that big cities have. And I think you guys have that.
Thank you.
Have you received the green light through, US EPA to proceed this project?
Yep, so there's currently DFFO orders on environmental conditions, so there's already been a vapor mitigation system
Yeah.
installed in the West Factory. It basically takes any vapor underneath the slab and it vents it up above the roof line. So we had clearance to put residential on the second.
Because that was always something they mentioned before, that was the holdup, and we were waiting. So that's clear.
That was a $3 million expense.
Yeah.
That's
So that was real, that was legitimate, that was truly, and we had to wait for that.
You had indicated earlier that your intent was to try to salvage or use, sorry, everybody's phoning in a question. That would be able to salvage or use as much of the previous construction as possible. Has anybody been through there to really get a determination on it? I mean, this stuff has been exposed to the elements for years.
Yeah, and we know there's gonna be some work required, and a lot of the masonry and all the window sills is decayed, and that has been addressed by the contractors that have come through to give us some over the last year or two. Yeah, I think for the most part, we think the framing is all in good shape. I mean, those that are closer to the windows that were not covered be replaced, but there's not a lot of warping and concern there, so I think we're okay.
Have you engaged a structural engineer to go through the building and determine its viability, given that 4 floors are missing an exterior wall?
Contracts from structural engineers right now.
Is the 4th floor, let's say they came back and said this floor is just shot, is that a deal breaker? Or is it, okay, we just don't use it, or it just becomes a rooftop deck, or?
Yeah, unfortunately, one of the expenses that was incurred, 7+ years ago was a replacement of the roof over 2/3 of that 4th floor.
Yeah.
residential. The portion here, kind of behind the smokestack, was
Yes.
was not replaced.
Okay,
But that was not the portion of the building that had any of the units framed out. Right.
Okay.
So that, we know that area needs a lot more.
okay.
About the north side, I think there's several violations right
The
now.
one that's collapsing.
Yes, is that gonna be,
That'll be
Just gonna
corrected as
stay.
part of this process. We've
okay,
been talking with the city about how we do that. I think with this project forward, we can do a little bit of a nicer, cleanup of that corner, which, still does not have any use for it. Which we're building there. This corner that we haven't identified, we're not putting residential on that right away. So, as opposed to just putting up plywood and painting it red, like we wanted to actually fix it and make it nicer, which this
So
larger
that-
project would allow.
that would all, okay.
Okay, well, we're willing to work with you on this. I know there's a number of departments that work, and we know that your experiences in other communities with building departments may have been frustrating. That is not one that generally is accepted here, so I know that we've been our building department, I feel, has been very involved and has made the Debo project a successful project because of our involvement. I think the ownership recognizes that. We're taking the same attitude here. We want this to succeed, and we will, do all that we can, whatever days it takes, to help you guys find your way on this project. I would just tell council that we're putting the development agreements, the guarantee agreements, all the different agreements together. Our legal team is putting those drafts together to get to them, and we need that to happen in the next couple of days. Incorporating the elements of what the school has done to make sure that those things actually take place at a certain time. I think that we're ready for council to have any more questions. Otherwise, we would ask council to advance this for a first read, and we'll be bringing back more information to keep this process going. But our hope here is that we can get through first read on the 11th, second read on the 18th. We break for Christmas. I know Stephanie, I'm pretty sure you really wanted to come back Christmas Day, and then New Year's Day.
Right. As you said, you're working, so.
Just the bankers aren't, right?
Oh, right, just the bankers.
So those are both on Monday.
Right.
So we would then pick this back up January 8th, which I hope would be the third reading at that time. And if there's any hiccups along the way that we need to.
We just need to make sure we coordinate with the school district on
Yeah.
signing.
Yeah.
We were talking in the green room about that a little bit. So.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. I'll leave you with this. We have a very, very loyal community, and we're cautiously optimistic about it. We're very excited. So no threats, but don't let us down.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so move on.
You just need a motion for us to place it on the agenda?
Yeah.
Move to place it on the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Wait.
Real quick.
Real quick, Tim, go ahead.
Maybe it's the same thing I'm gonna say.
What were you gonna say?
It's somebody's birthday today. I think.
No, I did want to say just one thing about Winterfest this weekend, and a real shout out to Christina Warwick, our very own councilwoman, for putting this on with a little bit of help from the city, but best use of our marketing dollars because of everybody who comes to that event far and wide. It's truly such little money that we put into it for what people get, and it's one of the number one things people say on their survey, and just really makes our city look very special for that. So thank you, truly,
Great event.
for doing that.
The library.
And the library.
Priority
Yes,
for me,
it does.
so,
It
yes.
does. The library.
Yeah.
Thanks for all those partnerships. That was it.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Happy birthday.
Aye.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday to the best president ever.
So you're